Even decades later, the horrifying events of the Holocaust continue to affect the lives of countless people around the world, including those who are related to the survivors. Here's a look at some celebrities whose lives and art have been shaped by this tragedy. Gene Simmons is famous as the face of the classic rock band Kiss. People may not know, though, that his mother, Flora Klein, who passed away in 2018 at the age of 93, was a Holocaust survivor. Simmons understood little about what his mother went through because she didn't like to talk about it. Flora told HuffPost writer Arlene Nissen-Lassen, "My dear, I can never unlock that door and bring up those memories, because if I did, I would go crazy and never come back." In March 2020, the German newspaper Bild am Sonntag detailed Flora's Holocaust experiences. She survived the Budapest ghetto in 3 different concentration camps. She was liberated in 1945 at the age of 19. According to one of the documents found, Flora stated, "As of March 1944, I, like all Jews in Budapest, had to wear a yellow Jewish badge on my chest at the behest of the German authorities." Simmons spoke with Steve Harvey about his mother's experiences and how they shaped his life, saying, "My mother had just a horrific childhood. At 14 years of age, she was in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany.
Were it not for the fact that my mother was there, I would have gone down dark alleys and done all kinds of stupid stuff. And my mother saved me."
Geddy Lee is the Canadian-born lead singer, bassist, and keyboardist for the band Rush. According to an interview Lee did for Q104.3 in New York, his parents, Morris and Mary Weinrib, both around age 13, met in Poland at a Jewish worksite before being moved to a series of concentration camps. After the war, they married and immigrated to Canada to begin their new life. Lee also detailed a story he heard from his grandmother of how Nazis would line people up and randomly choose which people to murder.
They would line them up every day, and they would go left, right, right? If you went to one direction, you went to the gas chambers. If you went to the other direction, you went to work.
Mary's mother lined them up so they would all go the same direction.
She believed that if they were all going to perish, they would perish together, and if they were all going to survive, they would survive together.
He added, "My grandmother was an amazing person. She kept them alive throughout their time in the camps." The late Tommy Ramone was born Tomasz Erdei in Budapest, but adopted the surname Ramone like all members of the Ramones. According to Hungary Today, Ramone's parents were both professional photographers and survived the Holocaust with the help of neighbors who hid them. Ramone and his family came to the U.S. in 1957, fleeing the Hungarian Revolution, and ended up in Queens, New York, where Tommy met the other Ramones. The book, The Heebie-Jeebies at CBGB's, A Secret History of Jewish Punk by Stephen Lee Bieber, argues that in some ways, punk rock developed as a response to the trauma of the Holocaust, and the Ramones' music would often allude to Nazis in World War II, in songs such as Blitzkrieg Bop and Bonzo Goes to Bitburg. When asked about this in an interview with the New York Times, Tommy Ramone said, "To bring forbidden things, horrible things, and make art of it was basically an artistic thing. There's an aesthetic effect when you take your deepest fears and try to get a grasp on it and try to make humor out of it." Hillel Slovak, originally born in Israel, grew up in Los Angeles, where he met Anthony Kiedis and Flea, and went on to form the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Slovak's mother was Polish. His father was from Yugoslavia, and both of them survived the Holocaust. While not much information is available on his parents' history, one has to wonder how their lives might have influenced the energy of the Red Hot Chili Peppers' music, in the same way it influenced the Jewish punk rock movement of the 70s. According to Tablet, when he was asked about what the band's antics stood for, Slovak said, "It stands for spontaneity. On tour, a lot of ridiculous anarchistic, something we do. It's just a release because on tour is a very good place to build up a lot of strange energies." Tragically, Hillel died of a heroin overdose in 1988 at the age of 26. Ivan Reitman is a Hollywood filmmaker, famous for films such as Stripes, Ghostbusters, and Animal House. Reitman was born in Czechoslovakia in 1946. His parents, Leslie and Clara, were Holocaust survivors. Together with their young son, they soon immigrated to Canada to escape religious intolerance. When asked by the Toronto Star about how his family's history affects his filmmaking, Reitman said, "Look, I'm an immigrant. I escaped Czechoslovakia with my parents in 1950. We're Holocaust survivors. so my whole thrust was to entertain. Ivan's son, Jason Reitman, is also a famous filmmaker known for Juno and Up in the Air. When comparing his and his son's style, Ivan said, his DNA doesn't have the built-in worries that mine had, and he was able to concentrate on doing things in a more insightful way. I think he looks at the internal story in a much more meaningful manner than I have had to do or have desired to do. Mila Kunis is best known for her roles in the TV series That 70s Show and the film Black Swan. What many people do not know is that Kunis was born in Ukraine, where, according to The Independent, she was forced to hide her Jewish heritage out of fear. According to the Toronto Sun, Mila had a friend who in second grade had a swastika painted on her chair at school. The message was clear to Mila, who said, "This is a country that obviously does not want you." Her family moved to the U.S. on a religious refugee visa when she was only 7 years old. Though Kunis keeps Jewish traditions, she does not consider herself to be a very religious person, possibly due to the fact that religion was suppressed in the Soviet Union. She said, "My whole family was in the Holocaust. Not many survived. After the Holocaust in Russia, you were not allowed to be religious, so my parents raised me to know I was Jewish. You know who you are inside." Gal Gadot, who became world famous for playing the lead role in the film Wonder Woman, grew up in Israel, where she was named Miss Israel at 18 years old and then served, as all Israeli citizens do, in the Israeli military. All of that was possible thanks in part to her grandfather, Abraham Weiss, who was a teenager when he was imprisoned at Auschwitz. He survived and immigrated to Israel, passing away in 2013 at the age of 85. In 2020, Gadot posted a moving tribute to him on Instagram for Holocaust Remembrance Day, writing, "He lost his entire family because they were the wrong race in someone else's opinion, and miraculously avoided his own untimely death 9 times. Your legacy is always with us. Your love for life and all people, your ability to forgive and to see the good in everything. You were bigger than life, and you are so missed." Josh Gad is most famous for playing Olaf in the film Frozen, and for originating the role of Elder Arnold Cunningham in the Book of Mormon. But in the real world, he's not Mormon at all, as his family is Jewish. In 2017, Gad told the Times of Israel that he took a role in the film Marshall to honor his grandparents who were Holocaust survivors. The stories of my grandparents surviving the camp makes the chance to play this hero who had to deal with anti-Semitism personal. I wish my grandparents were alive to see this very personal part of my journey. Sadly, Gad's grandfather, Joseph Greenblatt, passed away a year earlier at the age of 96. Gad wrote on Instagram, "Born in 1919, he fought through and survived the unthinkable during the Holocaust. After watching his entire family get slaughtered, he defied pure evil and survived against all odds to meet my grandmother, another survivor, and build a whole new life in New York." CNN star Wolf Blitzer, the head anchor of The Situation Room, was born in Germany to 2 Holocaust survivors. His parents, Sasha and David Blitzer, both from Poland, survived Auschwitz and later met on a train while traveling to search for surviving relatives. However, their parents died in the concentration camps, something he spoke about on Holocaust Remembrance Day in 2021.
For me, this is very personal, since my grandparents were among those murdered at Auschwitz.
According to the Jewish Journal of Greater Los Angeles, Blitzer and his parents came to the U.S. after the war, as the Displaced Persons Act of 1948 had opened the country to European victims of Nazi persecution. They settled in Buffalo, New York, where Blitzer grew up. He studied abroad in Jerusalem and worked as a reporter in Israel before becoming an anchor at CNN. When asked about how he feels about the U.S. welcoming Muslim refugees, he said, "As a son of Holocaust survivors who came to the United States as refugees after World War II, I strongly believe in refugee resettlement. This country welcomed my parents, who went on to establish a wonderful life in Buffalo, New York." Madeleine Albright is best known for her work as former Secretary of State and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations during Bill Clinton's presidency. She was born in Czechoslovakia, but when she was less than 2 years old, her parents fled the country in March 1939, less than 2 weeks after Nazis occupied the country. Albright grew up knowing nothing about her Jewish heritage. She only learned of it the same way the public did, by reading about it in a Washington Post article in 1997. During a conversation at the 92nd Street Y, she told Christiane Amanpour,
"And it's one thing to find out you're Jewish, which does add to interest to an already complex background, but another to find out that relatives had died in concentration camps."
According to Salon, Albright's father, Joseph Corbel, worked for the Czech government before the occupation. Joseph moved his family to London, where he remained a part of the Czech government in exile. After the war, they returned to Prague, where he became the ambassador to Yugoslavia. Their family finally moved to the U.S. in 1948 to escape the communist coup. In 2012, Albright published a book, Prague Winter, a personal story of remembrance in war, 1937 to 1948, in which she dives into what her family went through fleeing the war, as well as those who were not so lucky. 25 of her family members ultimately perished in the Holocaust, and it was clear from her research that even while living in London, her parents were still a target of the Nazi regime. Albright discovered German secret police records describing her father as the Jew Corbel and listing their home address in England. Christian Dior was a fashion designer and creator of top fashion house Dior. He fought for the French during World War II and completed his service in 1942 when France was occupied by Germany. After, he went to work as a head designer for Lucien Lelong. Dior found himself caught between two worlds. According to Vogue UK, Lelong turned out fashion for the wives of Nazi officers and for French collaborators in order to keep his business, and French fashion in general, afloat. But at the same time that Dior's employer was working, however reluctantly, for the enemy, Dior's sister Catherine Dior, who would later be the inspiration for his first fragrance, Miss Dior, was working undercover as a spy for the resistance. As detailed in The Secret Miss Dior, it was in 1942 that Catherine met members of the French resistance and began working as a spy, gathering and delivering information. For 2 years, she acted as a resistance agent, but in June 1944, she was arrested by the Gestapo. According to Jezebel, she was shipped out of Paris on August 15th on one of the last trains to leave before the Allies liberated the city. Catherine ended up at the Ravensbrück concentration camp, but luckily she survived. She was liberated in 1945 and awarded the Croix de Guerre, something normally only given to those in the military.